All right, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. Welcome to the Parks, Recreation, and Urban Forestry Commission meeting. It's August 25th, 6 p.m. I'll call this to order. We could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And as a reminder, if you haven't already done so, turn off the cell phones and we'll get into roll call.
Braithwaite,
Present?
Noyes is excused. Cornwell,
Present.
Patterson,
Here.
Tolleners,
Here.
Carlson.
Present.
Very good. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight? None. Any declarations of conflict from the commission?
Nope.
Seeing none. On to our action items. There are minutes from June 23rd, the meeting, June 23rd, and the meeting on July 28th that we need a motion to approve. Can I get a motion from anybody on the commission?
Make a motion to approve the minutes for both months.
Second it.
I got a
Who was second?
motion to approve, and Debbie seconded.
Thank you. So just to confirm, all commissioners are approving the consent calendar with those both months to accept as presented, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have any citizen issues or comments tonight?
Good evening, members of the commission. Brian Myers, Parks Manager, here to pass along a couple of comments that we received, both on the same topic since the last time we met. Had both relating to parking and a request to institute parking charges at some of our other parks outside of Camillin. So just kind of opening up that inquiry from the public to this group to see if that's something you'd like staff to bring back, what that might look like. The two specific requests were surrounding Corbin Park and Black Bay. So river access sites, certainly getting more activity in the off season. And both requests highlighted the number of out-of-state vehicles that were frequenting our parks. So as for those that were involved in prior discussions as we addressed the changes down at Camillin, we have to stay consistent with our own residency and not necessarily county or state residency on those locations. And there's some other nuance that may play out if we decide to go down that road, but wanted to open up the discussion and see if that's something you'd like us to explore further. Ultimately, it would be a city council decision following a recommendation from this group. So,
What would that look like?
what would that look like?
Yeah, so like specifically at those two parks, I mean, are we talking like integrity thing? Are we putting a worker there? Like how do we collect?
It's a very good question, and it would be part of what we'd evaluate as we brought something back to you. On the surface, just taking a quick guess at it, I think it would likely end up having to go the road of more of an integrity style monitoring. I don't see it being feasible, nor do I see the revenue at, say, Black Bay being sufficient to be a staffed monitored booth like we have down at Camillin.
Mm-hmm.
Corbin in the summer months might still make that work, and it may still pencil going that route. It also has some different access dynamics at that site versus Black Bay, so that might look different that way as well. So.
And is that something like our pass, if you're a resident, like how we do it?
I think that would be a part of this good discussion and recommendation from this group to forward on to council.
Gotcha.
So,
The funds be with Parks and Rec, or is it going to be under contract?
so any of those sorts of funds would be general fund revenue. It wouldn't be specific to parks, it would be a general fund revenue item. If we go that route, Black Bay Park is also, the development of that site was constructed in partnership with the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is a federal site. There are some strings attached with that project, or those funding sources that would require those funds be earmarked, so there'd be some additional administrative duty to ensure that the funds generated from that facility stay with the park.
Okay.
As far as Corbin Park, that is the city of Post Falls Park.
It is a city of Post Falls park. It is outside of municipal limits, so if we go down this road, there's going to be some administrative steps to process an annexation to bring that into the city.
Yeah, because
And-
currently that's technically because like the county sheriff responds to calls there, so that's what we're wondering how that would work with funds going through, because I mean, the county is going to want their portion of it.
Yes, probably wouldn't be funded in that way as much as it would end up likely being a administrative process of
Right.
going through an annexation request before council to annex city-owned property into city limits, and then it would be under our regulatory environment and enforcement. So versus having to ask the county to enforce parking violations, which would be a stretch with their many competing demands.
So stop me if I'm wrong here, but this seems like this would be a good workshop discussion.
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay.
So I propose we put this on the agenda for a workshop and kind of discuss it among the commission.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other citizen issues or comments, we'll move on. I don't see anything on the agenda for any unfinished or old business. We could move on to new business, which would be the Montrose Sports Complex Master Plan.
Good evening, members of the Park and Rec Commission. Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, here this evening to present along with Jeff Stiltz with our design consultant with MTLA a few concepts for the master plan of the Montrose Sports Complex. And so in doing that, we'll touch on a brief history of the site, kind of how we got to where we are, and then present a few of the concepts, and really just at this point looking for feedback and comments to consolidate some of our options and at a future date bring back a more refined concept for adoption. So no action tonight, again, just looking for comments and feedback and kind of how to proceed. So a little bit of background on the site. The sports complex sits within the Montrose PUD, which this is an original map from 1998, which is when the PUD was started. And part of the requirements of that PUD were for the developer to develop a 5-acre park near the school, which you can see up here, dedicate an 8.5 acre site for our community center, and then develop a 6.6 acre community park. And those are kind of just spread out throughout the development. Obviously, things have changed and we've consolidated since then, but in general, those were the initial requirements. And in doing so, the impact fees were waived for the developer. So they were not charged park impact fees because they were going to be doing these improvements and dedicating this acreage to the city. So back in 2019, the Park and Rec Commission expressed the need and the desire to add youth ball fields to the park system. And so they were asking the designer to look at adding 2 fields in that 5 acres next to the Westridge Elementary School up top. And then also actually wanted to see if we could fit 3 fields on that location, which was not able to be accomplished. You can see how 2 basically fills up that whole site and would likely lead to other conflicts being in a neighborhood as it is right there. And so it was then looked at, okay, maybe we consolidate some of those other acreages that we were owed on this property along with the community center, and could we get 3 fields in a different location, which you can see kind of in this lower area that was possible. Again, setting aside for the community center as well. And so that was another option. And kind of simultaneously, along with that process, the city was looking at developing at the time, the Quarry, or the Tullamore Sports Complex, now known as the Quarry Sports Complex, which was set to be a site for adult softball. But because of how that parcel is shaped, as you can see, it's not just a big rectangle or a square, and so getting adult size ball fields on that site was a challenge. And so then we, along with staff and the Park and Rec Commission, looked at possibly swapping those uses, so going youth on this site because of the awkward layout and shape, we could fit them a little easier, and then moving adult size to the Montrose Sports Complex, because at that time we didn't have a set footprint, so we were a little more flexible. And as you are aware, that is what happened. So we ended up moving youth to this site, which was master planned in 2020 to be the 5 youth baseball, softball fields and 4 multi-use fields, and then shifting Montrose to the adult softball complex. But we did still need additional land to accomplish that, and so reviewing some of the local sports complexes, it was determined that we needed about an additional 7 acres to accommodate the 4 softball complex size. And based on what the developer owed us, which was the 20.1 acres in the area, we did end up moving 1 acre from that 5-acre site down to just reduce how much we had to acquire. And so in 2023, we purchased 6.6 acres in the lower area of the Montrose site. So after that, we kind of looked at how we can fit these 4 softball fields on this site, and these were a few of the concepts at the time. Nothing was ever decided upon other than these 2 fields we knew would be on the north end, and so that's kind of why we're bringing this back to this evening. So phase 1, as I mentioned, was going to be the 2 ball fields on the north, which we began designing in 2024. That was complete and then went to construction in 2025. And again, this was a developer-led construction due to their obligations of the PUD. And so that was constructed last year, and we have substantial completion this spring. So they are basically done, just getting a few grow-in areas still established, but they will be ready for play in 2027. So like I mentioned, those fields were designed, but the rest of the site was never fully master planned or configured. And so in order for us to kind of continue development of this site, we needed to determine what that really will look like, which began our process of this master plan, which we contracted with MTLA this year. And so kind of one other thing that's come about in the last year, and longer, but more so in the last year, was the express need from user groups for more full-sized baseball fields. And so that kind of played out this spring a little bit. If you recall, Brian had a presentation on field usage with Little League and fees and that sort of thing, and this all kind of plays off of that a little bit, which made its way up to council, and then there was some direction from council to also have a desire for more adult full-size baseball fields. So we did take this opportunity to explore that as an option on this site while we're going through the master planning phase. And so there are concepts with 4 softball and then concepts with 3 softball and 1 full-size adult baseball field. And so just kind of briefly what those fields look like. The adult softball is a 300-foot uniform outfield fence, whereas a full-size baseball, and these are little adjustable, but generally we'd like to see 315 foul line and then 380 foot center line. So that is obviously does take up more space. And so those are just some of the pros and cons we have to weigh as we're going through this decision and these concepts this evening. And so with that, I'll turn it over to our consultant, Jeff, and he'll kind of run through the concepts with you.
Thanks, Robbie. Good evening, commissioners. I just wanted to, I'm Jeff Stiltz. I'm the landscape architect. Worked on both the quarry and the master plan, the earlier master plan, as well as the Montrose ball fields that are existing today. And working through all those master plans. So here we are in the next phase, doing the layout. These concepts, a couple things to point out that are pretty important, as you may know, is Clark Fork does not exist. So as we go through these concepts, a lot of them are superimposing where Clark Fork may come in. We don't have a plan for that. The developer doesn't have a plan. As far as I know, the city hasn't landed on a plan of what that connection might be. So that's one of the variables that may impact how this lays out in the future. And then the other aspect of it is the existing ball fields, as you can see today. The reason why the parking lot is where it's situated, where it is now, is because of that Clark Fork connection not being made at the time of the construction of the ball fields. So we're kind of stuck with how that laid out in that master plan. As you may have recalled in the earlier slides that Robbie presented, we did have parking right off of Clark Fork, which kind of pushed all the parking off there. So now we kind of have a split parking lot scenario in these concepts, and some of them actually have a kind of a shared concept as well. And so that's one item to point out as we go through some of these concepts. The other item being the future community center. This footprint is very similar to the feasibility study that was done just after the 2020 Parks Plan. And so this basically is the outline of that building with a little reconfiguration, because I don't know how familiar with it. Kind of laid out an odd shape for the building, so kind of reconfiguring, but still trying to keep in line of what the programming might have looked at back then. That is also a variable because this community center building, as far as I know, is a long ways away, and the programming hasn't been decided. There's only been feasibility studies done. So with that said, the concept A is very much like one of the earlier editions that we had done of this master plan that put the two ball fields, adult softball to the north and put adult softball to the west. The layout behind that, and with this concept here, is it gives an orientation to kind of separate out what might happen along Clark Fork and what happens with whatever development that happens in that core, and separates a park core and a parking area from the industrial uses that happen just beyond Empire Center Boulevard. And so it kind of creates a transition zone to the park, so you don't lose, usable park space that might be in the core that would be used for the development that's within the neighborhood. This concept creates a really good pedestrian pathways between the fields. It creates a park area that's centrally located within all of the fields themselves, so you have a neighborhood park concept with it. It allows for approximately 350 stalls, and allows for the future community building to be in the south, where it could be seen from southeast and accessed as soon as you come into the development. And with this concept and this layout, it gives a lot of flexibility on how these programs might fit in there depending on when they get built. So if the next set of ball fields were to be built, the adult softball, the new adult softball, just to the west and the southwest, if those were to be built, it will allow for a lot of extra room within there to add a future phases. So if the community center were to come online 10 years from now, it'd allow a lot of room for that, or allowing parking to be configured in such a way to allow for more park space. The next concept that we have, kind of another variation of the same concept there, except for this looks at the adult baseball. And so the adult baseball kind of, we looked at configuring it in a way that it would be in that central ball field. So even with adult baseball, because of the field size, we could still use it for adult softball. So you'd still have that use there. The downside of that is that because of this configuration, you have the baseball field would wipe out a little bit of the maintenance yard that is currently existing now. It's not really a yard, it's a gravel pad, but it's going to be used for maintenance for City of Post Falls Park to stage equipment or materials that is needed for ball field complexes. And so it wipes out a significant portion of that, probably about 50% of that. However, it still maintains a little bit of the park area, so you still get 55,000 square feet roughly of what that area is versus the 70,000 that you had when you had just the two softball fields. The other downside of that is because of the existing softball fields that are there today, they have a fixed line. So the fixed line in the north pushes that adult softball to the southwest down a little bit, which actually does encroach a little bit on the property line. And so, if this were a preferred concept, there would be some trading to be able to get property in order to get that area. Currently, I believe it's in an easement area because of Mullen. So there would have to be some workaround to be able to gain some sliver of property to be able to accommodate that. Master Plan Concept C. So this one looks at actually the ball field complex. So in some of the earlier ones, actually creating a ball field complex. So creating that with the 4 adult softball fields with the 300-foot outfields. This creates a central core, just like the football fields that you see in a lot of other places, to create that complex center with a restroom and concessions. The nice thing about complex itself is it creates those uses and it contains those uses, so that way people know that it's a softball complex. That's what they're using it for. They know it's there. It's a lot easier to manage when it's consolidated like that, to have field monitors, to have in a central location and be able to control the fields versus having the ball fields separated a little bit and having to have multiple field monitors. So this could be run a little bit more as a tournament style complex. The problem that this creates parade in the complex is it pushes everything to the south, which then also comes into the problem of possibly having the community center not knowing where it's going to sit at, and not having as much leeway of being able to move that around based upon where it is. The other thing it does is it pushes the parking over to the Empire Center Boulevard. We did look at a concept where we flipped the two uses, but we really wanted to look really hard at keeping the community center on that North Clark Fork Parkway and the Celtice Avenue corner, to be able to have visibility and use within the neighborhood, and keeping it a little bit more separate from the use from Empire Center Boulevard. With this concept, you have a little bit of park area, which is 66,000, a little bit more than the previous version that had the baseball included in it. And then concept D. Concept D is the complex layout that now looks at adult softball. So incorporating one of the fields, turning it into an adult baseball field, and creating that complex core with the restroom concessions, with the main pedestrian pathway to the future community center and the main pedestrian pathway that goes between North Clark Fork and the parking area itself. With this layout, you don't lose any of the maintenance yard, but you do have a limitation in parking. So the parking does decrease quite a bit. You go from 350 from the first concept to 325 in the next one. The last two, roughly around 250, but this one is probably even more significantly impacted when it comes to once it gets laid in there. And so we're really constrained on the parking. And then the same issues that we had before with the community center, not knowing where that place, what the size programming is going to be, it doesn't give a lot of flexibility in that southeast corner. So kind of the concepts comparison, the pros for concept A, it does allow the most parking space allowable. The ball field orientation, because of the way that it's hit and the fly balls and the foul balls, it kind of creates the ball field uses a little bit more away from the park uses, so you may not have an errant ball going into other uses. So they're either going out towards the street, which there would be netting as a barrier, but as far as pop-up fly balls and stuff, it wouldn't be extending too much into the park uses. The concept B does allow the most parking as well. Ball fields also kind of create that orientation where it does not put it in the hit errant balls into the park areas. Concept C, this is the one that creates the complex that is a lot easier to manage and run as a sports complex, especially for tournaments or even just league plays on the weekends or weeknights. And it does put the splash pad. One thing I didn't cover on the concepts too much was the associated splash pad that was part of the feasibility study. With concept C and D, it does put it on the west side, which is more the sun-facing side. So in the mid-afternoon and late afternoon, you'd have sun on there versus if it were to lay out as the orientation was in the concepts to be on the north side, more in the park, but then maybe blocked by the building itself, casting a shade on that area. Concept C also does provide for a little bit of flexibility for the park area, which can flex and move. However, it does get really limited from that complex layout. And then the cons to a lot of these, so the concept A, concept B, both limited the maintenance area that we have already in place. That is most likely the one that would be used as a maintenance area. The parking facility also is located amongst the park activities. So you do have to work around having a park and then having the parking facility in the center of it. So you may have a little bit more exposure to cars and park uses. Concepts C and D, as I had mentioned before, kind of puts the parking on the edge, limits the amount of parking, but it also limits how much interaction the park uses might have with themselves. Turn it over to Robbie now.
Thanks, Jeff. So I think probably as you can kind of surmise, really what we're looking at as far as discussion points are the decision for a full baseball field, and then whether or not we want to go with a real complex-centric design or more of maybe a community kind of park design for the complex. So going a little bit into the softball, baseball decision, these are our current minimum standard guidelines for both baseball and softball. And this was adopted January 2025, so this is the most current that we have right now. And as you can see, we don't separate adult or full size versus youth in either of these categories, so kind of take that as you will. But currently, baseball, you can see we are basically right at our need. And one thing I will point out is River City Middle School is not completely accurate anymore. They put in a track field or a track in their baseball fields, basically. So that's probably more accurate to be one baseball field at this point than three. So that's something we'll need to look at next time we update these. So more accurately, we're probably deficient in about 2 baseball fields. And as far as softball goes, you can see we are currently about 3 fields deficient, and that does include the 2 that are currently built, but they're not yet operational, but they are included in that 7 count for available at this point. So there is a need, I would say, for both baseball and softball, but one thing to note, the quarry does have 5 baseball planned for that site, and again, they are youth, but this doesn't distinguish full size and youth. And as far as softball fields go, Montrose is the only site at this point that we have planned for additional softball fields. And just to kind of give a brief timeline of these 2 field or complexes in far as our near-term development. So currently at the quarry, we have 2 multi-use soccer fields being built this year. And next phase of that would be 2028, looking to add 2 more to complete our multi-use field portion of that site. And then 2029 would look at adding the 2 fields we're discussing this evening at the Montrose site, whether that's 2 softball or 1 softball and 1 baseball. And then going back to the quarry around 2031 to add the first baseball fields at that site. And these are just projections, obviously that they're budget dependent, but that's kind of our future forecasting for these 2 developments. So as I mentioned, I think kind of the things to consider this evening are baseball versus softball and just the orientation and the structure of the site. I think just to highlight on a few things that Jeff mentioned, some of the issues and constraints are really parking. Being with concept C and D, it is more limiting, as well as there will be challenges coming off of Empire Center because we would only have really 1 access point due to the center median. And so that could also be a hindrance for parking on these 2 concepts being fully on the Empire Center Boulevard side of things. And just kind of looking at how much parking we actually need would probably be in the 500 stall range with full build out plus the community center. And that's with like a 75% kind of overlap of the 2 uses, which would be a real limiting factor due to the adult use would be in the evenings, and that is also a high use for a community center. So that is a real factor that we have to consider. So I think in concept D specifically, we would be short on parking, and again, we don't know what the future community center design may be. It could be smaller, there could be more room for parking, but I think it's something we have to consider so we're not hamstringing ourselves in the future. Or it ends up being something like a parking garage like they had to do at the Croc Center. But that's also another added cost.
Robbie, where would overflow parking be if these were all full? Like,
So
what are options for
there
that?
will be on-street parking for Empire Center and Clark Fork, which I calculated at about 80 stalls roughly. And so that is also with that, I think we still need additional parking with this concept specifically.
Well, specifically on Empire Center, you've got a lot of the Orgill trucks that park on the northbound side, that would create a problem. So you'd have to probably work out a deal with them to where they're not using that to get that overflow, because every day there's car haulers parked there, trailers parked there.
Yeah, there for sure would be conflict on that end.
I've noticed here you've got listed several ball fields that are not under Park and Rec control. The high school.
Yep.
We don't have any rights to use those. You got Ponderosa Elementary that's unusable.
So the way our minimum standard guidelines are set up, it's access for the community, not necessarily fields that we control or we maintain. And this is set up for all of our minimum standards, whether it's indoor basketball, volleyball, because we don't have any indoor facilities like that. So those are included. But you are correct that, we don't maintain or have rights to those fields, but they are an amenity to the public is kind of how these are set up.
Well, one of the things that you'll notice, we need adult baseball fields. We don't have any. And quite honestly, being somebody that's been involved in American Legion and in Little League for many years, you go to other communities around here, and it's an embarrassment what we don't have that they have. Even a little community like Orfino, Idaho, has a gigantic baseball stadium. So whatever you can do to foster more baseball, and that's what you need.
Sure.
You're talking about 500 cars parking at the down here in our Orgle. I've been to a lot of ball tournaments. I've never seen 500 cars show up at
So
for
a
ball
lot of
tournament.
that has to do with the fact that there's a community center being designed at this site as well. So we figure the ball fields themselves are probably around 200, but because we're having this site along with the community center, that's where it gets bumped up. So if you look at the Croc Center alone, it's about 450 stalls, and that's the Croc Center, not any other ball fields on that site, although I'm sure people do park there for some of the Ramsey ball fields usage. But that's where we're getting that 500 number. And to your point, we do have the one full-size baseball field at Sportsman Park, the Brett James Field, and that is the only full-size baseball field we have in the city's inventory.
Well, actually, there's so many parking restrictions on that field's almost unusable. We can't use it on the weekends. We can't use it on Saturday. We can't use it on Sunday. My understanding was that was deed restricted and was given to the city by Hildy Kellogg, the late Hildy Kellogg. And when there's church services on, we cannot use those fields.
Yes,
So
that's
for
correct.
tournaments and all that, and actually, Brett James Field is not quite an adult field. I don't know if I'd want the Legion kids playing in that field. They'd be hitting balls across the street into those houses.
Yeah.
You could repurpose that and look at that as an adult softball complex and repurpose that field, and you have better use of some adult fields on these other places that you're building.
Yeah, I think you could probably get one adult softball on that site. The other one would be a youth field still on 19th, but so like I mentioned, that's why we're bringing these options for you to consider what we're on how we want to move forward.
Question. On the restrooms, Plan A's got two on each, like one on each field, correct?
Those
red
are dugouts.
rectangle?
The red right here, is that where you're looking at?
Yeah, aren't the red rectangles on like Plan A and B
Those are dugouts.
existing, the ones that are already there? But I don't see any restrooms for the future plan on B. I like C.
So these red rectangles are the dugouts. Currently, there are no restrooms on site. They will be managed with porta potties until we have sewer put in off of North
okay.
Clark Fork. So at that point, we would be able to add restrooms to the site. And no, we didn't go into the level of detail of showing where a restroom building is on all of these concepts and where a shelter is, where a playground is. That's kind of reserved for this block of space as what's described as park area. But there will be restrooms, there will be a playground,
Okay.
a
All right, I understand
a
that.
concessions building, that sort of thing. It's just right now we're kind of looking big picture on really trying to narrow in on a decision moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
And so again, like I was saying, I think concepts A and B are a little more park friendly, I would say, of a design, where you have the most amount of typical park amenity space kind of in the center. It could create a nice flow between the fields and the community center, and really open up that space. Whereas C and D are definitely more of a complex focus site design, and you'll end up with less park area, and some of which could probably end up being more of dead space than really park space anyways. But all those can be worked out through design. And again, it's tough without knowing what actual footprint a community center will have and how those might intertwine. But at this point, we're, again, just looking for direction.
Okay, so C and D, or I'm sorry, what is it? B and D are the only ones with the actual full-size baseball fields,
Yes,
correct?
they're both basically the same. A and B are essentially the same designs. C and D are the same. They were just adding the full-size baseball in as a option for those.
Gotcha.
So maybe we could, again, because the only thing we have on, as far as I know, as far as the workshop goes next month, we could just get 4 big posters of these designs made up, and we can discuss it in the workshop of what we think looks the best to provide recommendation moving forward.
Yeah, we could certainly do it. You don't need any action item on it tonight, right?
Nothing definitive, or I
Sure.
guess no action. We were just looking for direction. But if that's the direction to push it to a workshop to get more into the weeds, then we can do that too.
I think it'd be helpful too, because like then we can talk about where the bathroom's out and all that stuff, and then a lot of this really hinges on, and I hope it goes through, is Clark Fork Parkway, because that would take a lot of the traffic off of Midway, because people.
Yeah,
race down
and
it.
I don't think Jeff meant to say that it won't go through. It will go through. It just, we don't
Just
know
when.
exactly when and how. The big question is what's going to happen with this intersection. That's kind of the unknown right now, and that's really stalling, I think, some of the construction and the phasing for that. But and in all likelihood, we probably could get more of this right of way here. I don't see that this continuation of Mullen probably happens in any design, but again, that's an unknown for the future.
Well, it really needs to be. It's like the concrete from whenever it was first
The
put
original,
in.
yeah.
Yeah. So, honestly, think for me personally, I would like to sit down in a workshop, look at some bigger images than just the ones on here, because I need a better visual than just what's in front of us. That's just for me. If everybody else, I don't know how everybody else feels about that.
Any comments from the commission on that? Workshop it or keep discussing it this evening?
Yeah,
I think a workshop would be a very good idea.
go with the
See
workshop.
doubts in people's mind, get it up on a board where we can see it and digest it and look at it further.
Is there, I guess, any direction as far as changes, or would you just like to see these 4 at the workshop?
I think you're pretty much, just looking at it, to me, it looks like you're limited to these 4. I mean, unless you drop a baseball field out of there, which sounds like there's a need for that. So, I mean, need for 4 of them, so.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, what I'm seeing is it's kind of split. I would like to see a adult-sized baseball and then softball as well. But, if we're looking at master plan concept D, parking is significantly going to be impacted. Like you mentioned, inherent balls and flies. I mean, on concept D, you're hitting them straight toward the other fields. So there are some things to consider there. I think a workshop would be good on this.
I think there's a lot of discussion to be held. I mean, even if we ran this till 7:30, I still don't think we'd be in agreement, honestly. This is a pretty big project, not a 15-minute discussion, in my opinion.
I think it would suit the city better if we could put our minds together in a workshop.
And honestly, I think we should, through social media, ask what do the residents want. I mean, that's why we're here, not our opinions. I mean, obviously, Bill knows a lot more about baseball. I'm more of a football guy, but I mean, have we asked the public what do they want?
Yeah, I think part of that kind of happened previously.
and that's
in
fair.
our the quarry master plan was kind of a big, very detailed and comprehensive public outreach, and that kind of dictated really how both of these sites. And as I mentioned, this was going to be just softball until very somewhat recently is when the full baseball came
baseball.
into the mix. And so, yes, we have done that. Just it's been a few years.
I'm curious, was the main idea here to make a sports complex?
Yes.
Then why do we have a community center? We can
Well,
use that
so
better,
the
use
community
that-
center was part of the PUD. That was an original requirement of the PUD. And so that's why we're reserving that space for the community center. Okay.
Right.
I'll just go with whatever the committee decides because I don't care for sports.
Fair enough.
So I don't know if a softball field is supposed to be the same size as a baseball field.
They're not.
They're different
They
sizes.
are different, yes. And youth is different from adult, and there's a lot of options when it comes to sizing and who plays on what, and there are challenges with fields that can do multiple different ages, I should say, and which is doable with synthetics and temporary outfields, but then it's overlapping uses and leagues and challenges with that as well. Okay, so it sounds like bring it back to workshop.
Yep.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks.
Seeing no other action items for new business, administrative staff reports. Okay.
None.
Any commission comments? Any lasting thoughts? Okay. With that, I will adjourn the meeting tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.